Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome back to the Beautiful, Powerful Love channel. Wow. So I have allowed shame to stop me from sharing this very important part of my life and of my journey. Tell me, have you ever been in a situation behind on your rent, had no idea how you're going to pay the rent, and your landlord is both shady and incompetent and immoral corporate property management company? You ever been in that situation? Your girl has. In fact, that was kind of the catalyst to my journey into being a digital nomad, although I knew it was a route that I needed to go anyway. So, this video is the first in a series where I share more about that journey that took me to Costa Rica, Mexico, back and forth across the country, and all the things. So, before we get into it, though, let me introduce myself for those who may be new here. I am Barbara Ohuninifa. I am an author, an ancestral strategist, and an intuitive guide. Like, subscribe, share, do all the things so that this shows up in your timeline and in other Black women's timeline who may need this medicine. Okay, so I gotta say, it is not easy to talk about financial problems and eviction. It brings up a lot of shame. We live in a world where everything is supposed to be together. You're supposed to have it's all about the bag and having the bag. Well, I felt like my life was collapsing, and in many ways, it absolutely was. And so, this is my truth. So, I'm going to make my way through it. So, this really started, I'm going to say, after I had surgery, my most recent surgery, where I had a very rare tumor and a kidney removed. It was a simple ish surgery, but the recovery was difficult. The recovery changed a lot of things within my body. And so going back to work, although I did go back to work, actually at a new job, it was difficult. I couldn't function, both mentally and but mostly physically. I could not function. And prior to that, paying the rent hadn't been a problem. It had just been a smooth flow of all the things because, I made good money in this corporate job that, kind of drained the hell out of me. And so while I was living in this particular apartment, the management company changed a few times since I was living there. It was only over a short period of time, but it changed abruptly each time that it changed. And I reached a point where I was behind on rent. I was going for rental assistance. I had kind of the local legal aid helping me out. I had the Housing Justice Project helping me out, but there was only so much they could do until or unless I actually received an eviction notice. Now, the landlord themselves, they were pressuring, they were putting letters on the door, they were saying they was going to come in. They were doing all these things to try to intimidate me. But each time I would explain, okay, go ahead and file the eviction, they didn't actually. They wouldn't actually do it. And I would say, well, can you give me a copy of my lease? Because it was all digital. I didn't have a physical copy and it wasn't in the portal anymore. They made up a lease. I knew for a fact that wasn't the lease I signed. They changed terms on it. They put some kind of a fake digital timestamp of when I signed it and an IP address, none of which were mine. And I called bullshit continuously. And I wouldn't succumb to the threat of that, although they kept putting notices on the door. And they got to the point where me and my son were sleeping with a chair up to the door in case they tried to come in the middle of the night. It was horrendous. It was horrible. And at the same time, because they lost or whatever, I don't even know what the terms of the lease was, if I was even still under a lease, if I was like, what, I had no idea what was what. And they didn't have any legal um, uh, documents either, which is why they didn't file for eviction, because it would have gotten thrown out because they didn't have a lease. I didn't have a lease, so I didn't even know how to operate in that. Now, technically, I probably could have just stayed in the apartment and just dealt with whatever, but it was really, again, this is like post me recovering from surgeries. This is me recovering from all the other things that had happened years before, a couple of years before, in terms of multiple open heart surgeries. My body and my mind could not take it. It was an emotional toll, both on me and my child. It was a lot of fear, a lot of shame. I was in complete survival mode in my own home. It was all of this. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. Now at the same time, I'm trying to do this healing work. I'm still writing. I'm still showing up, trying to do the things that I needed to do, both to potentially create an income, but more importantly, to show up fulfilling my assignment on this planet. So I thought, how can I do this? How can I be teaching what I'm teaching, but going through this? It's not adding up, it's not congruent. And I really had to understand what was happening to me and why and how I needed to navigate it. So here's where the spiritual world meets the real world. It's about a year and a half, almost 2 years before all of this started happening, I'd had a reading, an Ifa reading, and this isn't a video to teach you all about that, but I'd had an Ifa reading, and both Ifa and my ancestors spoke in that reading, and it was, oh, you need to consider moving. Actually, more specifically, you got about 18 months here, and you need to go. Now, prior to this, every other reading, every other ancestral bone reading, all the things would say, your ancestors didn't want you there that long in the Pacific Northwest where I was. And, I would take it in and just say, oh, okay. And then when it got real specific with a timeline, 18 months, I said, oh, okay. All right. No, I'll start working on that. But it wasn't urgent. When I tell you, once I realized that when all of these things started happening with me essentially losing my apartment, it was just over 18 months from the time I'd had that reading. I'd been told, you better go and make some plans to move, and I didn't. So things started falling around me. Things started falling away to loosen its grip so that I would be forced to move. Because that's the thing. When you are meant to do a thing, whether it's move, leave someone, change jobs, eat differently, whatever it is that you're supposed to do to make your life better, to actually heal. If you don't do it, things will happen to either force you to do it or. So that's what was going on. So of course, I did what I know. I went back to and got reading to see, is there anything I can do? The only thing I could do was some offerings, some ebo, some prayer, some ritual to stave off eviction. But I had to go. There was nothing else to keep me in that apartment, to keep me there long term. The only thing I could do was hold it off while I made preparations. And that's what I did. From that point forward, after doing all the things that were prescribed, I was able to hold it off long enough for me to figure out what the hell I was going to do. And of course, what I was going to do was a plan that I put in place, both, with my own mind and critical thinking. Because to be clear, spirituality doesn't replace your ability to reason in real life, to think through things in real life, to read and consume and look at different options in real life. Spirituality and the readings and tapping into the divine to understand what's actually happening on the spiritual realm complements you using your own damn mind. So that's what I did. I did a combination of those things. So when I think about how I was feeling during those time periods, it was, executive functioning, which is your ability to make decisions, critically think about things, and follow through, um, was pretty much frazzled. I mean, my nervous system was shot, not knowing if someone was going to come in my house in the middle of the night was just nerve wracking. And that was before the world and this country turned as nuts as it is now. Well, revealed the nuts that is already there. It was before all of that. But it was very nerve wracking. So I knew I needed to have a plan, but I was hesitant and couldn't figure out how to gather the plan because what I realized looking back, spirit, my higher self, my purpose was not to go back and do the things that had worked for me before. Getting a corporate job, a good paying corporate job, had never been a problem. Throwing myself into whatever I was doing and getting that bag had never been a problem. My body, my mind, and the circumstances would not allow for any of that anymore. I had to find a different path. And I didn't know what my options were. So yes, I went back to readings, I went back to rituals, at the same time planning in the real world. So while I was staving off that eviction, I was also doing research. I'd already felt like I needed to go to Costa Rica. I knew I needed to go to Costa Rica. I had gotten a reading on that, that confirmed it kind of resoundingly, that that was the destination for me. And there were some astrology reasons for that. There was a lot of things that were pointing me in that direction. But I'm like, I can't even pay my rent here. How am I going to do that? And so I started studying, you can guess, Stephanie Perry and Rashida Dow in the Exodus Summit. I've joined that community. I binged watched every single video. I dived into the tools and resources. I talked with other people. I really started getting into understanding it and immersing myself in the possibilities of that. And then diving into all of these videos and content around Costa Rica and moving, and people had moved to Costa Rica or going to visit. I immersed myself in that, which, again, in retrospect, is a key part of manifesting. You have to surround yourself and feed your mind with the possibilities. And that's what I did. And it was all super helpful. It was all helping me to both plan in the temporal, real, physical world, as well in the spiritual and energetic world, because the two had to align for anything to work. And again, in retrospect, some of the things that I was trying to do to get myself out of the situation weren't working because they were not aligned with where I was going. So strategy and spirit go hand in hand. That's why I'm an ancestral strategist. If I'm trying to figure something out about my life and how to move and what to move and what decisions to make, I'm checking in with my ancestors. I'm also checking in with them on what they've done in the past that worked or didn't work, and what they wish they could have done. All of that information is available to us, and I tapped into all of it to try to figure my way out of this. So that was super important of combining those two. But again, Exodus Summit, Stephanie Perry, Rashida Dow, as much as I would like to say that all of a sudden things shift and it turned into and then in 90 days it was all beautiful. No. This becoming, this changing, this transformation took some time. It was a long arc. And I'm thankful to Stephanie and Rashida and the Exodus Summit community, as well as the other ladies that were in the 3 client challenge, because that was a critical and important part of the change, the shift. It helped me being a part of the community, hearing what they had to say was a part of how I was able to hold it in my mind that it was possible. So I mentioned the next 3 clients challenge. This was I don't know if they still offer it now, but Stephanie and Rashida came together and they had this 1 week or 6-day challenge that folks signed up for to help us to get the resources or to put to create a line of income to help us to be digital nomads. And I remember in that cohort, Stephanie saying to me, "Oh, you already got a book? I could tell you already a speaker. Focus on that." So I said, okay. So I focused on trying to get speaking engagements, putting together the pitch, sending out things, sending out proposals and pitches for that. And things started to move. Now, I could tell or feel some sense of movement, but it was still a while before I really started to see, oh, some things are possible. Something is possible. But it was because of that community, both the 3 clients challenge and the Exodus Summit community, Stephanie and Rashida, that, things started to open up. I saw a possibility. And it is no accident that this is a group, a community of Black women. No accident, very clear. So that in this way, Costa Rica and being a digital nomad seemed accessible to me. I felt like I had options. I was still overwhelmed, depressed, anxious, blood pressure out the roof, and all the things, but there was a glimmer, there was a possibility, there was something there. So yeah, honey, that's how my digital nomad journey began, from damn near being unhoused to now in this spirit-led life of freedom. But it wasn't easy, and spirit had to come in and take everything so that I could move. And I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful for Rashida and Stephanie and Exodus Summit and next 3 clients challenge. All of that was integral to my healing, my internal, mental, emotional, even physical, and definitely spiritual healing. So if you're in a place of fear, facing eviction and endings, and listen, with what's going on in the world, what's going on in this country, something is shifting. It's shifting at the Uber level, the higher level across all of us, and it's shifting individually in our lives. And if you're feeling that and it's kind of unsettling, know that your ancestors, your higher self spirit, your God, whatever your spiritual practice is, got you. But you also got to have you. So, in this next episode, I'm going to share how my prep for this digital nomad journey started with a paid speaking gig and a cross country zigzag and a whole lot of Facebook marketplace sales. So, with that, I thank y'all for joining me and for allowing me to share, because now I don't have shame about it. Your girl was damn near evicted, essentially unhoused, but I'm still here and I'm doing the things. I'll see y'all in the next one. And until then, take good care of you. Peace.